We are very happy today to welcome Donna Lewis back to the Legal Wellness for the NASA Office of General Counsel. Donna Lewis is a lawyer and a cartoonist in Washington, D.C. She works for the Federal Aviation Administration headquarters, where she reviews FOIA appeals. She holds a law degree from the University of Maryland and is a member of the Maryland State Bar. She's also done pro bono work in the area of disability and special needs trusts. Before working for the FAA, Donna worked for the Department of Homeland Security and also the Transportation Security Administration. And as if that's not enough, in her after hours, Donna creates Reply All and Reply All Light, which are cartoons that insist enlightenment is overrated. Back in April of 2022, she came here and she spoke to us as part of the Legal Wellness event and provided some humor and insight as we were all transitioning back into the office after COVID-19's extended period of mandatory telework. Now Donna has been working on a new project, which is titled 21 Tips, Tricks, and Tweaks for Finally Figuring It Out. And this book is going to be a simple collection of easy changes that can help you to thrive no matter what challenges you live with or how far back or dark the place you're coming from may be. I really think that she's got a lot of insight that's just going to help everybody, no matter what challenge you're facing, to just thrive in daily life. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I turn it over to you.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to be back at your agency. So yeah, it's a mouthful to say 21 tips, tricks, and tweaks, but it's an important title because I'm not giving advice as in a system. I haven't developed a new system. I haven't developed a new approach. I'm not telling anybody to do this or do that, because what I found after a couple of decades of dealing with some pretty serious challenges is that, number one, a lot of the systems and programs and plans that are out there by all of these great authors, they really are based on a lot of the same principles. So really just do a lot of stuff, try a lot of stuff, and stick with the things that work for you. And then the other thing I realized was that tweaking and really just shifting things around a little bit worked for me ultimately much, much better than making significant changes in my lifestyle, in my diet, in my exercise. It was small changes that really made a difference in my daily life. Next slide, please. The official welcome sign. Okay. And a spoiler alert that you might get inspired to change in some way or two. I really would like to convey the message that you have to make changes if you want something to be different. I know we talk about that all the time, and there are a lot of inspiring quotes about you do something the same, you get the same result. If you want a different result, you have to do things differently. But I never realized how much I was doing everything the same. I was so married to everything I did because I believed that everything I did was keeping life from getting worse. And I think that's a really important concept to hold on to. If everything you're doing is just keeping life from getting worse, then it's time to find things that you can do different that will make life different. And that's a very hard realization to make. And we're going to talk about realizations a little bit coming up. Next slide. And a heads up that you can have any kind of reaction you want. You don't have to laugh at the cartoons, but if you laugh, that would be very nice. And there's not a whole lot of depth in this presentation, but I do encourage you to explore more in the areas I'm talking about. And when I give a tip or a trick or a tweak, it is based in some real science, and I definitely encourage you to follow up with me if there's a particular slide or a particular tip that you want to hear more about. I've got a website. I've got tons of resources on my website. I do err on the side of CBT and DBT and talk therapy. I can always talk about those. So um, you can ponder, you can question, and feel free to follow up with me afterwards. I always love doing those things. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to get on with the show, and here's just a little introduction to our main characters. And they are based on me and my cousin, my first cousin who I grew up with. We did sleepovers all the time and that kind of stuff. She and I are very, very different. Our entire lives are different. There's almost nothing that we have in common, but we've been very, very close since we woke up. And yet, all through the years, we have worked together to discover how to get better at living a life that doesn't tear us apart. And I say doesn't tear us apart because there was a lot of anxiety in our life growing up. We did not know it was called anxiety. We didn't know that. That wasn't the word that was used back then. It was only when we became adults with medical problems that we began to understand anxiety. And so a lot of the comic strip, a lot of the cartoons kind of go into the area of, are you thinking? Are you breathing? Do you know what's happening in your body? Is your body giving you a message? And yes, your body is always giving you a message. If your body is unhappy, you have to think about what's going on in your life. And more importantly, what's going on in your brain. I'm here today to really focus on the brain. That's what I had to focus on, and that's what made the big difference for me. Next slide, please. What if? Okay, I know that. First of all, let me say we're all lawyers here and legal staff, whoever has gathered for this today, legal teams. Let's say legal teams. If you have been working on legal teams for your professional life, then I already know a lot about you. I already know that you're stressed out at work. I know that you're probably a perfectionist. I know that you probably are worried that your work is not good enough sometimes or all the time. I know that you're very dedicated. You're probably either very disciplined or worried that you're not disciplined enough. We are high achievers, generally speaking, and we all work for transportation agencies. We work for agencies that have to be concerned with national security, the safety of our public. We have serious jobs. We have jobs that really have to do with the well-being of our nation. And so it's hard not to go into what if. It's hard not to go into what if, given the case that we're working on, given the motion, given the brief, given the petition, given the complaint, given the congressional. It's very hard not to say, what if I mess this up? What if I don't get it in on time? What if I don't finish today? What if I don't get it to my boss for review? It's hard not to do what if. And most of us, a lot of us, were raised for a lot of years saying what if, the same way we said should. I should do this, I should do that. What if this, what if that? It's hard to give up the habit of what if. I had a hard time giving up what if. And everybody said to me, don't say what if, don't say what if, put $1 in the what if jar. It was ultimately easier for me and better for me to turn the what if into the opposite, which is kind of a Dale Carnegie principle. Dale Carnegie, if you know anything about him, How to Win Friends and Influence People, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Dale Carnegie taught how to live in day-tight compartments, which is very, very good. Compartmentalizing. That's not a tip here. That'll be in another book. But he also taught, think about the worst that can happen. So what I suggest and what I do now and what really works, I'll tell you why in a second, is to say, what if the worst happens? What is it? What is it? What is it? What if the reasonable thing happens? What's the reasonable thing? And then, which I know none of you ever do, and I never do. Well, now I do it, but I didn't used to do it. What if the best thing happened? Like, what if like the lucky person thing happened? What if the thing happened that always happens to like the relative or friend of mine who like life always goes their way? Plus they get money on top of it. Plus they get a prize and flowers. I have people like that in my life. I would like to have the luck that they have. So what if the worst happens? What if the in-between happens? What if the best happens? What if something good happens? When I started asking, what if the best happens? I started thinking about the best. I started imagining and fantasizing and imaginating the best. And because I'm doing better these last months and the last year or two, it's fun because now I can start making some plans and I can start doing some of those best things. So watch your what ifs. I'm not going to tell you stop saying what if. I mean, if you have a hardwired what if in your brain, it takes a lot to get rid of that hard wiring. I'll talk about it in a second, but try other what ifs. What if the worst? What if the reasonable? What if the rational? What if the good? What if the best? You never know. Next slide, please. Whoops. Always have a deadline. Always have a deadline. I have hung in there because of deadlines. I've been successful because of deadlines. I have stayed the course because of deadlines. Don't hate your deadlines. Your deadlines are your friend. If you're not good at living well with deadlines, figure out how to do it. Send me an email. I have tons of resources. I have tons of resources online. Deadlines are your friend. I got syndicated as a cartoonist in 2010. So starting in 2010, I had 7 deadlines a week to produce, which means write and draw a cartoon. Then in 2011, I got a second cartoon syndicated. So starting in 2011, I had 2 syndicated properties that ran daily, 7 days a week. That's 14 deadlines. Those 14 deadlines kept me from doing dangerous things that my mind wanted me to do, unhealthy, bad, upsetting, disruptive, harmful, destructive things. Deadlines are my friend. Deadlines can keep you holding on to your structure even when your heart gives out, not in the real way, not heart attack. Well, maybe heart attack if it's affecting you medically. But when your soul, your stomach, your body, your mind, your mental wellness, when you're having a hard time, use those deadlines because you can use them as milestones. You can change one thing or another and kind of try to get to that next milestone. If you're a runner or a walker, think about it in terms of like, get me to the next tree, get me to the next block, get me to the next stoplight, get me to the next stop sign. Your deadlines are your friend. Deadlines kept me going in the last years when I didn't have anything else to pin my hope on. There came a period in my life where I had no hope left. And deadlines were what really saved me. So learn to use your deadlines to your best benefit. Next slide. Have a thing. This is really important. So obviously my thing is cartooning. If I needed something in addition to cartooning, that would be really ridiculous. Cartooning is very different. You don't run into a lot of cartoonists. Well, and if you do, maybe we know each other. But being a syndicated cartoonist is completely fascinating and fun and interesting. And I've met all the cartoonists around the country, and I know cartoonists you love. And my editor was Charles Schulz's editor. Now that's ridiculous. I mean, that's crazy. So I have a thing, and luckily my thing, my cartoons, like I said, they saved me for a lot of years because I had 14 deadlines every week for this is our anniversary was yesterday. Yesterday was our anniversary, 14 years. My editor and we've been syndicated for 14 years. So, that's a good thing to have. I'm not telling you have to go out and become syndicated for 14 years, but have something that makes you light up, have something that makes you smile. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, my family is my life, my partner is my life, my children are my life, taking care of this is my life, taking care of that is my life. I understand that. And for 10 years, or so, 12 years, the kids in my family, 7 kids in my family lived here off and on part of the time for 10 or 12 years, off and on, in and out. And honestly, they were my thing. And I learned toward the end of that, as they grew older and wanted to not hang out with their favorite cool aunt, I learned how hard it was to watch them leave and go off to friends' houses and friends' sleepovers and relationships and college. And so, just a word of caution, get your own favorite thing. Get your own favorite thing. If you want to do it with your kids or your spouse or your partner, or I've done favorite things with pro bono clients, I've done favorite things with neighbors, but get something that's really special to you so that when you go to that party and somebody walks up to you and says, "What's your deal?" You can say, "I'm a cartoonist." Because I don't know about you, but I don't really want to talk about FAA disclosures at a party. And I don't want to talk about the track of my career and terrorism and transportation and national security. And honestly, I live in DC, and for sure nobody wants to talk to another lawyer. Lawyers are a dime a dozen here. Well, no offense to anybody who's here in Washington, but honestly, Washington, DC, nobody's dying to talk to me about my career, even though I could talk about my career forever. I think it's been kind of cool. But get your own thing. Get your own thing. Maybe that's a thing you could do today. Get your own thing. Next slide. Figure it out. This is where I started. Oh, by the way, I should have said these tips, not in any order at all, not in any order, but figure it out. Now I should tell you a little bit of my story. I spent my life not knowing what the problem was. Part of that is because I was born in the 60s, and in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, a lot of professionals didn't know a lot of things about neurological health and mental health. And while I was in school, until I graduated high school, and while I was in college, it wasn't clear to professionals what was causing my problems. I was having very horrible, horrific visions of violence that would be done to me, violence I would do to others, violence I would do to myself, and dangerous things that I obsessed about. So I just used the word obsessed. I was obsessive from the word go. I was the kid at school who always had things that had to be in specific places. I had to have 5 erasers, not 1 eraser, because each eraser was for a different reason. Each color pen was for a different reason. Each type of paper was for a different reason. I was extremely organized. It was really fun in elementary school because my best friend was also extremely organized. As I got older, it became part of my success. I was wanted on teams, intellectual teams, academic teams, not not any physical sport teams at all. Last picked. But I was wanted on like school teams and academic teams because I was so well organized. I could take all the notes, turn them around, put them into a book, put it into volumes, do a directory, have a table of contents. That was me. By the time I got to college, I could not turn papers in. I was positive they were horrible. I was positive I hadn't reviewed them enough. I was positive they were wrong. I was positive I had made an error that was the error that would bring down the world by college, by my first semester in college. And that's what started a real nightmare of me not understanding what an obsessive brain is like. And from college until a couple of years ago, I did not have control of my obsessive brain. And because of my obsessive brain, I had a lot of compulsions and I had a lot of urges. When you hear people talk about urges, like for instance, somebody who has issues with alcohol or drugs, they might talk about having an urge to take that alcohol, take those drugs, watch that porn, be doing those, playing those games down in the basement for 12 hours in a row. The urge to do something, the urge to use something. My urges were dangerous urges. They were urges to go to dangerous places and do dangerous things. It was OCD. I didn't find out until very, very late because what happened is that doctors, therapists, and my family thought I was suicidal because it sounds like you're suicidal when you're having visions of driving off of the road or jumping off of a building or any of a variety of other things that I was obsessed with doing. But I wasn't suicidal in the classic sense. And I would be asked for decades over and over, so you want to kill yourself, right? And I would say, I'm obsessed with killing myself. It's all I can think about. I can't get my head to shut up. That's obsessive. That's obsessive, intrusive thoughts. And the medication for that is a different medication than they use for regular anxiety and depression. So in my 20s and in my 30s and in my 40s and in my 50s, I wasn't taking the medication that I'm taking right now. The medication I'm taking right now is great. And I've also had other treatment that's great. I have tried ketamine, which did not cure obsessive thoughts. But before I found the treatment that was really great, ketamine made me able to go to work. Ketamine enabled me to wake up and be hungry and eat food and drive my car and go to work and engage with people. Ketamine is like wake-up drug. And I did it the legitimate way. Insurance paid for it in an infusion. I had many treatments. If you want to know anything about it, I write about it on my website, and I'm happy to take questions. Ketamine got me through a couple of years where I had lost hope, where I thought my life would always be those constant intrusive thoughts in my brain saying, make it over. It's over today. This is the last time today. Over. Today is the day. Ketamine got me through that. The medications I was taking took the edge off, but that's all they did. They only took the edge off. I also tried every brand of CBD because as soon as I took ketamine, I should say that I never experimented with drugs as a teenager or in college or anything. So after I had ketamine infusions, I had a sense of, I thought maybe that's what it feels like when you have, your brain on a drug. And so I looked into CBD because CBD was becoming very popular. And there's a million kinds of CBD out there. I don't know. I understand it. I don't understand it. I don't know. But a lot of people get a lot of relief from CBD. But I know from experience, and I know from my friends, you have to try a lot of different types of CBD before you find one that works for you. But maybe you might be lucky and it's the first or second or third one. But if you try CBD to help you sleep or to alleviate chronic pain that's driving you crazy or whatever, just know that you may try 10 of them and they don't do anything, but that 11th might change your life. So I'm a fan of CBD. You have to make sure that you understand the legality of the CBD. You have to understand to read the labels and make sure you know exactly what is in your CBD. And that's all I'll say. I don't do that area of law. I don't understand that area of, well, I understand it, but I don't do it. So do it. Anyway, figure it out. The reason I say figure it out is because entirely in my 50s, I had been diagnosed as obsessive, but I had not been diagnosed with intrusive thoughts, chronic intrusive thoughts of violence and harm. Everyone still thought I was just suicidal, just suicidal. And I could not get anybody to understand that I didn't want to kill myself. I wanted to stop having to think about it all day long, no matter what was going on. I just had these constant intrusive thoughts. Couldn't get anybody to understand it. And I just couldn't figure out how to change that. And I just kept saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And my family kept saying this sentence, which you should think about. They kept saying, I wish I knew what to do. I wish I knew what to do. And every time they said that, I came home and I thought, nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows what to do, which to me is equated with there's nothing you can do. There's nothing I can do. I can't think of anything, and I'm a smart person. What I didn't realize, because I was so desperate, is that I can figure it out. If I was working on somebody else's pain, I would figure it out. I have figured out every problem that everybody else has. I've had a million pro bono clients. I have figured everything out for them. I have taken away their pain. I have taken away their problems. I have resolved their issues. I have reconciled their accounts. How can I not help myself figure it out? I got to a point where I could not stand hearing somebody say to me, I wish I knew what to do. Figure it out. And I figured it out. It took years. It took years. I started researching clinical trials. That's how I learned about ketamine. That's how I learned about transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, which absolutely, completely knocked my brain around. And I'm the boss of my brain now. My brain is not the boss of me. Next slide. Go micro. You all know this. You know this. Micro everything. Micro everything. The cartoon here is about party micro. Get thrills in your day, get treats in your day. You don't have to eat a whole bag of peanut M&Ms. You can have the little small bag. Just satisfy some little cravings, do something fun. Whatever you're doing, you don't have to go keto in order to change your diet. You could just change like one little thing or this little thing or that little thing. Experiment, do little things. I added titrate micro. Titrating is when you change the dosages of your drugs. I've been on every drug that there is for depression, every drug. There are several different types, and you should learn those if you have been diagnosed with any kind of depression or anxiety. You should be researching those drugs. You should become an expert on those if you have been taking anything. My goal was always to get off the drugs. I should make the drugs as low as they can possibly be because they all have bad side effects. Get off the drugs. That's all I heard from people for 3 decades. Get off the drugs. Get off the drugs. When I was getting TMS, I had a meeting, an evaluation with the director of the OCD clinic at Johns Hopkins Hospital. It was a 4-hour evaluation. And the doctor said, why are you taking so little of the main drug? I won't say what the name of the drug is because I don't want you guys to take advice from me. But there's one drug in my life that makes really all the difference. It has a bad side effect for me. It sedates me. And so I have to be really careful. I can't take the same amount every day. I take different amounts depending on my work schedule and my driving schedule. So the director said, why are you taking so little of this drug? And I said, it totally sedates me. I don't know what to do. It's my total problem. I live and die for that problem. And he said, well, why aren't you just doing this for the sedation? And I ended up increasing the dose, which I had never even thought of, and my therapist had never even thought of. Increase the dose. Am I muted?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. I got a little sign that said you're muted. I'm not muted. Okay. I increased the dose and took another little pill, it's nothing. It's really nothing. And it takes away the sedation part. I don't even feel it. I take this little pill and I don't feel it at all. All it does is counter the sedation. And it's 100 million% more effective. So the change, though, in the drug was not a huge amount. It was a little amount. And now I can titrate by little amounts, but get a significant difference. So try going micro, try titrating, just try little changes. Next slide. Always have a reward in mind. You guys know this, but do it. Always have some reward in mind, something you're going to do, something you're going to get, something little. Order a $5 something from Amazon, let it delivered to your house. Next slide. There's no problem. If there's not a problem, then say it's not a problem. Say there's no problem. If you're the type that always thinks there's a problem, and that's me, and that's probably a lot of you, remind yourself there's no problem. Say it out loud if you have to say it out loud. If you feel yourself thinking, oh, there's a problem, what am I missing? What did I overlook? What did I leave out? If there's no problem, say there's no problem. Get in the habit of saying there's no problem. I don't need to be obsessing about whatever you're obsessing about. Next slide. Write it down. Write everything down. I have detailed history of how I have responded to every dosage that I've taken every day for the last many years. And it made me an expert on my body chemistry, and it has enabled me to get much better drug advice from experts. I've been able now in the last 2 years to start really talking to experts and find out really what can I do now to really pinpoint where the problem is and deal with it. So write everything down. It becomes your history. It's so helpful to have. I have my history going back so long. It's so helpful. Next slide. Oh, and make it searchable. Next slide. Make your own playbook. Make your own Bible, make your own manual, handbook, rules, guidance, wisdom. Know your rules. I have rules. I don't go around talking about them all the time, but I have rules and I stick by my rules. And if somebody wants me to do something that goes against my rules, obviously it's a case-by-case basis. I think about it. I, consider all the options, but pretty much I stick by my own rules because my own rules are really oriented toward keeping me healthy and able to work full time. And those are my two priorities pretty much right now. Next slide. Row your boat. Find your metaphor. My metaphor has always been rowing my boat. I've always been rowing my boat. I was either against the tide or with the tide or down under, crushed under the tide. But I've always been rowing my boat and, looking at the weather. When I started doing meditation, there were a lot of metaphors about the weather will pass. Just wait for the bad weather to pass and stuff. There are so many metaphors for your journey. Find a metaphor you like. Find a metaphor that works for you. Maybe you don't want to row your boat, but maybe you're sailing your ship. Maybe you have a yacht. Maybe you are driving your yacht, or maybe your captain is driving your yacht. Get a metaphor that works for you so that you can motivate yourself when you need to be motivated, which is all the time. Next slide. Remember to breathe. I always stick these in here. Remember to breathe. Next slide. Make things easier. This is really seriously for all lawyers. Plain language. Just say what you mean to say. Fewer clauses, be aware of the fact that you talk like a lawyer. Even when you think you're talking all casual, laid back, chilled out, you're not. You're talking like a lawyer and you sound like a lawyer and nobody understands what you're saying. Make things easier. Don't complicate them. And I have to say, I'm rolling my eyes because I'm terrible. I like talking like a lawyer. I love ye old English. I love all the old stuff. I like the old cases written in the old, complicated way. So I have trouble with this one. But when you're talking to other people who are not lawyers, get easy. Otherwise, they're not going to understand you. Next slide. And it's important because if they don't understand you and you're trying to explain that you're having obsessive intrusive thoughts of violence and harm and they hear suicide, that's a disconnect. I had that disconnect for 3 decades. 3 decades, 20s, 30s, 40s, half of my 50s, more than half my 50s, 3.5 decades. Use language other people understand. They only heard suicide. They didn't hear obsessive intrusive thoughts. It's a different medication. Exercise your memory. I have memory problems. I had ECT, electroconvulsive therapy treatment, and I lost a good amount of memory when I had ECT. I spent the next couple of decades just living with a bad memory. Oh, well, I lost a lot of memory. Oh, well. When I went through TMS, I started having memory problems and I decided to combat it. And I started doing puzzles, those New York Times puzzles. I started doing those puzzles like crazy. And I also started making timelines. I made timelines of my favorite music. I went on to AI, Chat AI, GPT, Chat GPT, AI, whatever. And I said, what were the most popular songs in 1962, the year I was born? And I went year by year and picked out the songs I knew. And that led to me remembering memories of those times. I started making timelines of my favorite movies, my favorite music, my favorite car, my favorite boyfriends, my favorite whatevers, my favorite foods, my favorite books. And it all started bringing memories back. You can really, really activate your memory. So definitely start doing it now. Those puzzles are so good. You know what puzzle is good? The one with the tiles. It was annoying to me at first, but it's actually really good. And the other one that's good is the connections one, which is, it's really hard. It's hard after I get the first 4 connected. But anyway, try the New York Times puzzles. Next slide. Realize things you need to realize because the truth is the truth. I had to realize that I was doing things that were part of OCD. I had to realize that some of the things that I do are signs of OCD and just people thought I was weird. So I have tics. I have some facial tics. People just thought I was weird and I don't know what I thought. But as soon as I started investigating and learning about OCD, it was right there on the page. Do you do this? Yeah, that's why you do this. It was nice. I wish I had learned that a couple decades ago because I could have, gotten some treatment. But, just realize things you need to realize the truth of your situation. I had to realize that I can't do much on the weekends if I'm tired. And people need to understand that. My family never understood that before. They said, well, you have to eat. They would say, you have to eat. Let's go to the restaurant. You have to eat. And you know what? No, I'd rather stay home and write than go to the restaurant. I'm tired and I really want to write. Writing's really my thing. Next slide. See yourself how others see you. The tics I said I had, for decades, people were saying to me, are you okay? Are you okay? And I never knew what they were talking about. It turns out that I make faces when I'm typing or reading or researching or whatever. So for decades in the library, at work, in the coffee shop, I make really like kind of faces like babies make. I go, I don't know that I do it. And that's why people have been saying to me all over the years, are you okay? And I would always look at them like, what? What? Something wrong? I would say, yeah, I'm okay. And they would say, okay. So I have no idea how crazy people thought I was. Next slide. Hear your language. That's the story about intrusive thoughts. I never knew that language until I was told I had OCD, and I researched OCD and I realized what the language of OCD was. OCD has its own language. Depression has its own language. Anxiety has its own language. Addiction has its own language. Neurodiversity has its own language. If you or your children or your partner or your family is in any of those bubbles or thinks they're in any of those bubbles, you have to find the overlaps in the language, because you could be in a different bubble or you could overlap with a bubble and you just don't know it because you're using different words. Listen to the language you're using and see if it might be kind of the same as the language that's used in a different bubble. And the bubbles I said, I think, were depression, anxiety, depression, anxiety. I need the plug. Depression, anxiety, neurodiversity, addictions. I think there was one else, but I don't remember what it was. Okay, next slide. We already talked about this. Different, 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 different. It'll only be different if you think different and do different. Next slide. Speak up. That was my problem my whole entire life. I never understood anything doctors and therapists were saying, but I felt stupid, and I always would take a note that says, look this up at home. No, talk to the professional while you have the professional say, I don't understand. What does this mean? Where should I look? What does this mean? What is this? Ask the questions and push for answers to the questions. Ask as many questions as you need to. Come back, make another appointment. I started making extra appointments with all my doctors because I needed extra work, extra time with them to talk things through and to understand things. Next slide. Make someone else's day. This is a good one. I started doing this when I didn't feel good. I couldn't engage with people well when I didn't feel good. So what I started doing was I started getting $5 bills at the bank, and I would just give somebody a tip. So like when I didn't feel good, I would go to McDonald's, and during COVID, I loved COVID. COVID was the best. Staying home was the best. But during COVID, I would go with the dog in the car to McDonald's in the pickup lane, where they come out and they bring your food out to your car. And I would give them a $5 bill, and I would think, they must think I'm so rich and I don't have any money at all. I don't have any money. But a $5, I would think, you know what? That's what rich people must feel like. No wonder they feel so good about themselves handing out a $5 bill. And they're probably handing out like a $20 bill or a $50 bill. Do something nice for someone else, make their day, tell them something nice, just try to make someone else's day. And when you don't feel good, try the $5 bill or the 3 ones or the, whatever. Next slide. Schedule sessions with yourself. I started scheduling sessions and turning my phone off so that I didn't get distracted during those sessions. On weekends, I usually schedule 2 sessions on Saturday, 2 sessions on Sunday, so that I can finish the book and do the stuff I need to do without having somebody say, yeah, but just come around the corner for coffee. No. Next slide. And use a timer. I'm a big timer user. Study the evidence. Remember, you're writing down all that stuff. That's all the evidence of who you are, what you need, what you're missing, what you like, what you want. Next slide. No need to know it all now. That's a lawyer thing. Just because you realize a problem now doesn't mean you have to do it right now. finish the thing you're doing, take a breath, refresh your drink, then do it. Chill out. Let things go for now. You all know that. Let things go for now. For now. For now is really helpful. For now. For now, let things go. They'll come back. Next. Know your team. Tess McGill. That's my girl. Pat Benatar, Stevie Nicks, Joan Jett. I think of them every day. Next. Martha Stewart. I love Martha Stewart. Know your inners. And Mel Robbins. Is it Robbins or Robinson? Mel Robbins. Man, I could listen to her all day. Check her out on YouTube. Know your inners. I have an inner coach. I wish my inner coach would come out every day, but I can't make that happen every day. Inner critic, inner counselor. Call out your inners. Next slide. Remember that other people are going through something too, so remember to give them a break and not be too offended by what they say. Next slide. Also remember that some people aren't going through anything, they're just like that, so don't take what they say personally. Next slide. Remember to write and rewrite your questions so that you can answer, so that you can get answers to the right questions. I was never saying, why do I have to be asleep all the time? Is there a way I don't have to be asleep all the time and still take medicine that works? Should have been asking that 20 years ago. Next. And give yourself a break. You guys know this one. Give yourself a break. You're not the worst person in the world just because you're struggling with something. Next. Find viable hope. The difference between hope and viable hope is like where people say to you, oh, things will get better. Viable hope is where you say, we're not eating at the party, we're leaving the party and we're going to McDonald's. Think about that. That's hope. Viable hope is when something might work and you really are thinking, boy, this might work. So when I started taking ketamine and then CBD and then TMS, when I started looking at clinical trials, I knew something was going to happen. I knew, like, now I'm trying stuff. Now something might work. Next. Find specific gratitude. This is my gratitude thing, not just I'm grateful for being alive. I'm grateful for trees and life. Be grateful for something specific. I'm really grateful that my health insurance covered TMS. It was a fight. I had to fight the insurance company. But they were going to do it anyway, and I just was not willing anymore to wait another 2 years. My life is slipping away. Just go ahead and pay for it. I have a good argument. I've waited decades for this. So, find some specific gratitude, make some gratitude happen. I am grateful for health insurance paying for TMS. Next slide. And remember, change your goals every day, once a week, every month. Let your goals change depending on how you're making changes. And I think we're coming up on the last slide here. Oh, yeah, just my information. That is the last slide. It's just my contact information. And that's it. And these are the girls I drew when I was the most suicidal. And they'll be on some product that you can buy someday, somewhere in summertime.
Donna, thank you so much. I'm really appreciative of the time and the focus and just how transparent you've been about your journey. I think what you've been through can touch people in so many different ways because all of us have been through something. And I really trust that some of this insight and these tips that you've provided, they're going to resonate. It's going to give somebody another tool in their toolbox to get through today, to get through the next challenge, to get through the next hard season of life. And that is phenomenal. The fact that you can use your journey to help all of us this way, we are incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I wish we had more time. I want to respect everybody's time, but you've also been so gracious about providing your contact information. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of pull some of that off the slide and put it in the chat so that if anybody is wanting to follow up with any questions, it'll give them the opportunity to do that. As we're closing here, yeah, I see we've got a lot of people saying thank you and stuff. And if we could all just, maybe give Donna a round of applause, maybe come on camera and wave a thank you hello, that would be terrific. It's so hard sometimes to be an audience to a bunch of little icon
it's so nice
pictures
to see
floating
your
on the screen.
faces.
So
You're all so
if you're willing to come on screen and say hi to
beautiful.
her, I think that would be a terrific way
You're all
to end today's
beautiful.
community meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for lasting that whole thing. That's a lot of talking. Thank you so much for
Thank
listening to
you.
that whole thing. And please contact me. Any questions? No off limits, anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate everybody's time today, and feel free to reach out if you've got any additional questions. Thank you, Donna.
Bye.
Bye-bye.